Hi everyone, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. My name's Fat and I'm from the employment team here at SCIA. And on behalf of the employability team here at SCIA, I'd love to welcome you to today's webinar, which is part of our series covering all aspects of disability employment. So we'll just give everyone a minute to log on. I know that there might be a few stragglers, so just grab that cup of tea or coffee if you need to, and then we'll get going very soon. Thank you. Okay, hi again, everyone. So I'd like to welcome you all again to the first of our webinar series regarding disability employment. Today's topic is disability inclusion in the workplace. So just to give you an idea about what we're going to be covering today, we'll share some information about disability employment in Australia. We'll provide you with an insight into disability employment from a lived experience perspective. And finally, we'll talk about disability inclusion in the workplace and what that looks like in practice. So firstly, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all meeting from today and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to elders, both past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we're all dialing in from different areas of the country. So I would like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the beautiful Darkinjung area of the central coast of Australia. Okay, so firstly, who is SCIA or Spinal Cord Injuries Australia? So SCIA were founded by people living with spinal cord injuries back in 1967. A group of individuals living with disability found that there were significant gaps in services for people living with SCI or spinal cord injuries. And fast forward to today, where the organisation now provides a range of services, including employment, peer support, advocacy, and also exercise physiology with gyms across Australia. As you can see, people with disability or living with disability make up over 25% of our staff, and the majority of our board members are people living with spinal cord injury themselves. So what is our purpose? So at SCIA, our purpose is to create a world where people with spinal and neurological conditions and their loved ones thrive. Just coming from the lens of someone who oversees the employment services, we take that a little bit further. So our purpose within the employability team is to really connect people living with physical disabilities, so not just spinal cord injuries, but physical disabilities, and connect them to opportunities to allow them to reach their employment goals, which hopefully means achieving a job and sustaining that in the long term. So what I'd love to do now is to share a very short clip just to give you a bit of a sense of our, I guess, mission with SCIA and the work that we do.
In Australia, over 1 million people have a neurological condition, including spinal cord injury. Every day, one person sustains a spinal cord injury, and the estimated cost to the economy is more than $3 billion annually. Disability doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And that's where we directly support thousands of people each year living with a disability through our services and programs. Spinal Cord Injuries Australia is a for-purpose organisation. Our mission is to empower the lives and advance the rights and choices of people living with a disability. We also provide real-world education and training programs for companies to become more inclusive for a better future. Together, we can create a world where no one faces disability alone.
Okay, cool. Okay, so hopefully the video gave you a bit of a sense of the work that we do at SCIA, and obviously we have a number of different services, but today's focus is on inclusion and employability. So let's take a look at some numbers regarding disability and employment in Australia. So in Australia, around 4.4 million people live with disability. That's about 1 in 6 people. And further, if you dig into those stats when it comes to employment or unemployment, you'll see that 113,000 people with disability are currently unemployed and looking for work. And from our perspective, that is a significant number and completely unacceptable. So it really drives the work that we do here at SCIA, and in particular within the employability team, to really try and support that group move towards their employment goals. So we can take a further look a bit deeper into those numbers, and these two columns here for me are really quite significant, and they paint a very scary picture when it comes to unemployment. So that first column there you'll see is around 3.7%. That's the general population, and that's the general population's unemployment rate at the moment. The bigger column there is the one that really strikes me, and that's around 10%. That's the unemployment rate in Australia for people living with disabilities. So you'll see that that's almost triple the rate of the general population. What does it mean? It really drives and fuels the work that we do, because everything that we do within the employability team is to try and reduce that gap from the 10% down to the 3.7%. It really goes to show that we do have significant challenges when it comes to addressing the barriers that people face when you're living with disability, trying to find meaningful employment. So everything that we do within the team is shaped towards trying to reduce those barriers and help support people reach their goals. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to one of our employment coaches, Forrest. He's going to introduce himself and just really tell us a little about his experience as a person living with disability going through employment challenges.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Pat. My name is Forrest. I'm an employment coach here at Spinal Cord Injuries Australia. My job is to help people living with physical disability get meaningful and long-term jobs. So my lived experience of disability is that I'm a C6-7 quadriplegic. This condition is the result of a downhill skiing accident in 2015, where I fractured my neck right above my shoulder blade. What this means is that I'm a full-time wheelchair user and have limited use of my arms and hands, and not any function below chest level. So as soon as I had my injury, I needed to get back to work. I had a family to support. I'm married, I have 2 teenage sons. And before my injury, I was an electrician. I worked with my hands all day, and I couldn't do that anymore. So I used my previous knowledge of electricity, and I actually retrained to become a solar designer and salesman. I worked in the renewable energy space for 6 years before joining Spinal Cord Injuries Australia in February this year. This whole journey was not always smooth sailing. There were times along the way where I faced barriers like discrimination. My boss from before my accident saying straight to my face that he thought I couldn't do anything anymore. I faced non-accessible workplaces where employers didn't think it was important to make a workplace inclusive. I faced employers not being aware of what it's like living with disability, and having no flexibility managing the symptoms of my injury, thinking that I would have to take too much time off or that I wouldn't last very long. These sort of things are not acceptable in today's society whatsoever. And now what I'd like to do is use my previous experience of returning to work as somebody with disability, and impart that to others in similar situations. And the aim of all of that is to break down the barriers, and create a bit more of a society that promotes inclusiveness in the workplace and everywhere else. So now what I would like to do is maybe talk about some of the benefits of employment for people living with disability. Okay, so some of the benefits to employment for people with disability. The first one is financial independence from Centrelink. Centrelink was very helpful at the time when it was needed, to be free of the constant check-ins and the uploading of pay slips, and somebody feeling like having somebody looking over your shoulder is great. It's nice to be free of that. Ability to support the family is important. I was the main income earner before I was injured. So working takes the pressure off of my other family members, my wife in particular, to make up the difference. Social connection is huge. Working within a community and feeling welcome and joined in a workplace makes things incredibly better for people. Social connection. We're all social animals. It's super important to be able to have that social connection, to be able to talk to people outside of your home. And then meeting new people, feeling part of a team and feeling valued, which improves your mental health fitness. And it's a bit of a knock-on from there. Having improved mental health improves your confidence. And that creates more confidence to do things outside of your comfort zone, which means giving you greater independence. So improved confidence will lead to feeling greater independence, getting out into your community, and enjoying more social interaction and things that you might not have thought that you would do before. So those are some of the most important benefits to employment. So now I would like to hand back over to Pat to talk about our employer case study. Thanks very much, and over to you, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Forrest. So yes, I'd love to share with you an example of an employee that we've been working with. So here's Alex Yannick is the Managing Director of AccuSensus. AccuSensus as an organization are a high-tech company, and they work in the space of road safety, and they've been delivering contracts with the Department of Transport for years. Alex and his operations team essentially approached us at the beginning of our employability journey to talk about how we could support them with their recruitment via our specialist recruitment service, which essentially places people with physical disabilities into work. At the time, Alex was really conscious of driving forward his passion for disability and inclusion, especially around workplace safety and around road traffic safety. So he was really aware of the need to try and build a more inclusive and diverse workforce, and really struggled at the time to reach out to specialist recruitment agencies in order to get that support. So he actually found Employability's team, which at the time was the only specialist recruitment agency that actually catered for placing people with physical disabilities into work. So we got to know Alex's needs as an employer, which essentially meant really getting to understand what kind of roles he was looking to fill and the kind of workplace conditions that he had to offer the potential candidates. The work that Alex needed to recruit for was actually a very specialist team of image reviewers. So picture the cameras on the highways out in New South Wales and Queensland that essentially take photos of every car that goes through each lane. with a view to checking to see whether anyone who driving through those lanes has been naughty and has been using their mobile phones incorrectly. AI actually, the amazing systems that they've set up, actually captures about 97-98% of all the images and really works out whether people have been illegally using their mobile phones. But about 2 or 3% of those images actually go into a special folder which requires a human eye to dissect, because the actual AI technology isn't good enough to actually process that information. So Alex essentially approached us and said, "Fat, we need some people with great attention to detail who are able to assess the road rules and apply those rules into these images and try and help us to determine whether people have been contravening the laws." And we were able to kind of get to that point where we could see that the roles that Alex was looking to fill could be work from home, highly flexible, but required a really good attention to detail. So we got going to look across our caseload of candidates, and we saw that the great thing was physical disability was not a barrier for any of these roles, because the setup could be done from home. Alex and the team at AcuCenters could provide all of the technology for each individual to set up and make sure that it was a safe working space at home. All the technology was provided. And we, over the years, have placed over 15 candidates, over 80% of whom are wheelchair users, into that image review team. So we're really proud of the relationship that we've built with Alex. And just goes to show, you know, if I move on to this next testimonial from Alex, where he says, "Our partnership with SCIA has provided us with outstanding team members who have excelled in their roles. And through their life experiences, they have strengthened the diversity of our workforce and our competitive advantage." So you can see how much Alex has really benefited from a business perspective, not just with the actual human resource, with the team and the expertise of the people doing the work, but it's actually really helped Alex promote his business and the work that they do through winning new contracts with government organisations. So it's been a success on two fronts there, and obviously we've been able to create opportunities for almost 20 individuals living with some people living with high level disability. So it's been really a great success story. And it's not just AcuCenters that we work with. There's some really big organizations that we've built relationships with over the past few years. Higher up, you'll probably be aware of, they are a disability support worker company who provide support workers to people living with disabilities across Australia. And we, over the past year, actually, we signed an agreement, a partnership with Intercontinental Hotels Group. So that's IHG. You'll probably be more familiar with their brands of Crowne Plaza and Intercontinental Hotels. And we've got a great partnership with IHG, and we're really trying to promote the work that we do and they provide in terms of opportunities in the hospitality sector across Australia's hotels. And we're really pleased to see recently we placed someone actually in the central office function in one of the Sydney hotels as a integral part of their administration team. So and that was someone living with a physical disability. So these relationships are going from strength to strength. So that's the hospitality sector. But we don't just cater for those sectors. CPB Contractors are an engineering and mining company that go across the whole of Australia and internationally. So we've been working with those guys. We placed a person recently into their IT department. So technology is also an area that we work with. And iCare. So iCare are a government company, iCare are a government organisation, and we've been working with iCare over a number of different areas to support their inclusion and diversity training within their workforce, but also we are working towards actively filling vacancies on behalf of their talent acquisition teams as well. Okay, so it's probably worth spending a bit of time talking about, as an employer, why would I be looking to strengthen my diversity and inclusion? And as you can see from the list here, it's not just one reason. Um, a lot of times employers may not have actively looked at people living with disability as an actual pool of talent, and it's really important to know that once you do start to look at this group of potentially previously overlooked candidates, you're actually opening your eyes up to another pool of talent. This helps you to really diversify your search, overcome other recruitment challenges. I think embracing a different type of candidate, certainly people living with disability, really helps you to create a culture of inclusion. And I think that really kind of helps to foster, different creative business solutions to the challenges that you may be facing. When it comes to being able to promote yourself as a more diverse and inclusive employer, what we're finding is that it really helps you build your brand as an employer, as a company, as an organization. I think that really helps connect to wider audiences at the same time. We've also found through a number of different studies as well that organizations that really do embrace inclusion and diversity find high levels of productivity, high levels of staff retention as well, so lower staff turnover rates. Okay, so I guess we're getting into the meat and bones of the presentation and the webinar today, but I think well, the key question, so what does disability inclusion mean, and how can you foster a more inclusive workplace? So we put together 4 key points, but bear in mind that this is certainly not an exclusive list. And our Building Employer Confidence program goes into much deeper levels when it comes to this important topic. So towards the end of the presentation, we'll be able to talk about how you can get more engaged with our Building Employer Confidence program. So ensuring employees with disability have the same opportunities to succeed, learn, and advance as everyone else. So I think a starting point here would be to look at your current process and identify any obstacles that would prevent an employee with disability from progressing compared to their able-bodied colleagues. This might mean, making sure that as an employer you've actively created pathways for progression for everyone in your team, especially those who may be overlooked because of their disability. It's about being proactive, I think, in identifying development opportunities rather than waiting to be told that someone has the potential to progress. And that might be the case sometimes with people living with disabilities. They simply get overlooked for opportunities. So the second point there, creating an inclusive workplace where people feel welcome, valued, and appreciated for what they bring to the table. I think for me, this is about creating inclusive values and a culture that embraces all employees for their strengths and encouraging people with disability to develop into roles where they can be visible contributors to the success of the organization. Not just back office staff. So often, I think there might have been a tendency previously for people to hire people with disability and kind of just put them into back office roles. And it's important that, we're not just looking at that kind of area of work. We're looking at pushing the boundaries and trying to support people with disability into leadership roles so that we can really demonstrate that our challenges can go right to the top. Okay, so the third point there, implementing workplace modifications and assistive technology that allows employees to safely complete their work. So know that disability can come in all forms, shapes, and sizes. So as employers, it's vital that you take the time to ask yourself, are we an accessible workplace? Can a wheelchair user, for example, access the building? Can everyone comfortably access the bathroom, make a cup of coffee, have lunch with all of their colleagues, adjust the desk to a comfortable working height, operate a mouse effectively and comfortably, perhaps enter text into a computer without the use of a keyboard? So have you asked these questions to yourselves? And if you can answer them, with confidence, then you're going about it in the right way. And being able to positively answer these questions, I think will mean that you're really heading in the right direction as an inclusive employer. So in line with the workplace accessibility and workplace modifications topic, it's important to know as employers you have an amazing government support network and support service through Job Access. So that Job Access scheme, including the Employment Assistance Fund, is there to actually support you financially to make modifications and changes to accessibility, not out of your own pocket. So I think a lot of the time there's the perception that perhaps supporting people with disability to be accommodated into your workforce is going to be an overly expensive process, but it's really important to understand that the government has a department and a service that is there and is designed to support you to make those changes and make it financially viable for you to do that. So the EEF is there for you, and the Job Access program is there to support you go through that process. We've got more information on those schemes in case you want to delve deeper. All you need to do is reach out to the Employability Service and our team will be able to help you. Okay, and finally, point 4 there, to commit, I think, to disability inclusion as employers, we need to ensure the voices of your employees with disability are being heard. So ensuring policies and practices are developed alongside employees with disability, so co-designing where possible. And where you may not currently have people already employed in your organization, people with disability, you can reach out to the experts in the employability team, and through our lived experience of disability, we have that expertise to help you develop your own policies and practices to make sure that they are disability inclusive in readiness for when you are ready to take on people living with disability into your workforce. Okay, so we've covered a lot today, and if there's a key message from me, it's that this is a journey. It's a big journey, and at Employability, we're here to support you every step of that journey, however long it may take. So if you feel as though you're at the complete beginning of that journey and everything just seems too big a task to even start, I think it's really important to understand that you are not alone, and you're probably not the only company, organization in Australia that feels like this. So it's really important to understand that we are here to support and get you through that first step so that you can actually start this journey effectively. And I guess I feel that this is where it starts. This is where the conversation starts. So we've got a series of webinars that we've developed on these topics and further additional topics in the future. You can see there that the next in line is how to become a disability friendly employer, which I think will be a really great segue from this first webinar, and that's on the 1st of November. And then following that in January, we've got a building an inclusive workforce webinar, followed by addressing common misconceptions and bias, and that's March of next year. So I guess just to finish off, really, I'm really excited to be able to invite you to engage with our, building employer confidence program. which is a comprehensive program designed to take employers on a complete journey from initial assessment all the way through to building a disability confident workforce. So as I said, that first stage there is to complete a really intensive assessment process, and we try and ask a series of questions that really digs under, I guess, the skin of you as an organization, understands where you're at right now in terms of your inclusion and diversity. We leave no stones unturned, and I think it's really important to again make you aware that this isn't about, you know, highlighting your flaws and what you're doing wrong. This is about helping you really be comfortable with where you're at in terms of your disability awareness, inclusion and diversity, and helping you start that process. So that's where the initial assessment comes in. From there, we actually create a tailored action plan based on the answers of those assessments, and we create a plan that's focused on helping you develop that strategy to becoming that disability confident workplace. We help you engage with really appropriate and relevant learning and development modules, and then once you've completed that learning disability awareness training portion of the journey, I won't call it the most important part of the journey, but it is absolutely integral. The final step is to actually support you with recruitment. So as I said before, we run a specialist recruitment service here at Employability, where we place people living with physical disabilities. So that's coming from our lens of having lived experience ourselves. So I do say that, you know, it's possibly the most important part of the journey, because we could spend a lot of time talking about learning and development and taking courses and doing workshops, but essentially the learning portion is vital, but what's most important in this whole journey is actually making those changes live. And for us, that's actually placing people with physical disability into the workforce. I think it's really important to make sure that after the learning is over, we really take the learning and make it live through changing the physical aspect of your workforce. And that's making physical changes, but it's also changing the composition of your workforce by supporting you to engage with people living with physical disability. Okay. So that's actually all I had for you today. I hope you found it really informative. We've made some time for some Q&A here. And I think we've actually been able to compile a number of questions that myself and Forrest would be happy to go through. All right, so I'll go through these questions in order. So right at the top there, the first question is, in your work with SCIA, what have you seen as the main barriers to hiring people with disability? So as we probably touched on earlier, there are a lot of barriers that we've been working on over the years, but I think for me, one of the main barriers is misperception. There's a lot of misperception out there coming from employers about, you know, engaging with people who live with disability, and some of those misperceptions could be things like, it's going to cost too much money to hire someone with a disability. I'm not going to be able to adapt my workspace because of the costs of making workplace modifications. People with disability are going to take too much sick leave, you know, things like that. And these are really powerful misperceptions because they actually prevent people from making that decision to hire people with disability. And the truth of the matter is, as we've already touched on here in the webinar, workplace modifications, especially around accessibility, can be supported via the Job Access Programme, so they can actually come at no cost. And the second point there, you know, touching on sickness and retention and things like that. There are heaps of studies out there that actually show that productivity from people living with disabilities is actually higher than their able-bodied counterparts, and also retention rates are also potentially higher as well. So there's a couple of areas there that I think we can overcome with you know, talking through those misperceptions and really trying to share the actual truths around those factors. I've got the second point there. What jobs are most suited to people with disability? What jobs? It's almost like how long is a piece of string there? Because there is no one job that's suited to a person with disability, because it's almost like trying to ring fence people with disability into one area. And the truth is that just because you live with a physical disability, it doesn't actually prevent you from doing any job. So I think it's really important that we reiterate that our approach to employment is that we take into consideration the individual that comes through the door, and we just assess that individual for their skills and their experience regardless of the disability. So the actual disability doesn't become a factor when we actually go to place people. The only factor it may influence is whether there are any workplace modifications that we may need to consider and talk to the employer about. So you know, when it comes to what jobs are most suited, there aren't any jobs that are more or less suited. We just treat every individual as an individual in terms of their skills and experience, not based on the disability. The third question there, how can I better engage my staff with disability inclusion? I think that question is a bit of a broad question, but I think, you know, in terms of how does engagement improve, I think it's through education initially. So going through our process of the assessment, where we're able to kind of highlight the areas of your organization that, you know, we could really strengthen in terms of workplace education. We have a number of modules that we can deliver to help engage with the workforce, and ultimately, you know, I think one of the last points I made in one of the final slides was that the most significant changes I feel are actually placing people with disability into the workforce, because that's where you actually get to really live disability and inclusion, and it really helps the workforce improve their own experience of disability by working alongside someone living with disability. And the final question there, what are some examples of workplace modifications that I might need to consider? I might throw that one over to Forrest, actually, who's been through a few changes himself, so he might be able to talk about the modifications.
Cool, thanks, Pat. Yeah, some of the examples of workplace modifications that you might need to consider as an employer would be automated front entry, level front entry. We'll start at the front door. So first step is getting somebody with a disability into your workspace. So yeah, that could mean a lift or an automated front door and level entry. Some of the other things you probably want to look at once somebody gets into the office is just workplace comfort. So having access to a wheelchair accessible bathroom, may or may not need to have an automated door on that. Most likely it would. So I mean, that needs to be there for everybody, bathroom. Second of all, I would say a place where they can sit down, have some lunch, make a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee. So an accessible kitchen bench area, which would be really, really helpful. And then you can get into the AT or the bits and pieces that you need to be able to physically do your job on a computer. There's all sorts of areas you can go to and get assessments from occupational therapists to be able to get specialty typing aids, specialty mouse to be able to run your computer with, and even be able to get involved with having like voice to text and stuff if you don't have any function of your hands at all. So those are things that you can talk to with your employees once they're in the job situation.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you, Forrest. So
No problem.
I have no doubt that you may have more questions, but I'm going to leave my contact details here. So if you do have any questions about the presentation, or you have anything else you want to ask about the employability program, the webinar that we've been through today, the Building Employee Confidence program that we discussed, I'd love you to reach out to me at pngo@scia.org.au. That's pngo@scia.org.au. Alternatively, you can head to our website, employability.org.au. And we're going to send out information following this for everyone that's registered, just in case you missed out. So again, I would love to thank you for taking the time to join us today for our webinar, and I hope to see you at the forthcoming webinars in our series. All the best and see you soon.